This conference will now be recorded.
About the requirement and types of requirement.
Okay.
Kanban process.
Okay. Kanban methodology. It's not a process. It's a methodology. Methodology of software development. Under that, the practices of Kanban. What are the practices of Kanban? And then we talked about the prioritizations and the prioritization techniques, like Masco technique and prototyping, requirement workshop, and time boxing, etc. So far, we discuss about these things, and today we are going to talk about, in continuation with the requirement engineering. So we will talk about the various types of activities that are performed under requirement engineering. So when you talk about a good requirement specification, what are all the characteristics of a good requirement specification document? What are all the characteristics of a good requirement specification document? Where the requirement should be unambiguous, the requirement should be complete, consistently defined across the documentation, the requirement should be verifiable, and the requirement should be modifiable. Requirement should be modifiable. So the requirement should be unambiguous, the requirement should be complete, consistently defined, the requirement should be verifiable, the requirement should be modifiable. What does unambiguous means? What does complete in the sense? What does consistency means, and the verifiable and modifiable? So especially when we talk about unambiguous, the requirement should be clear, measurable. First and foremost thing is measurable. For example, I can say that, okay, for example, if you are trying to gather the requirement from the stakeholders, and let's say one of the stakeholders says that I want the system performance to be improved, or the system performance needs to be improved, whatever. That's a requirement. Definitely, the system performance has to be improved. That's one of the requirements. But it is not a clearly defined requirement or a clear-cut definement. Clearly, it is not a clearly defined requirement. Why? So because there is no measurable criteria, first of all, and then with regards to what the performance needs to be improved, which functionality of the application the performance has to be improved, that is not defined. That is not defined. So that's the reason why, like when we talk about the clarity, like there should be some measurable criteria. So the performance of the system needs to be improved with regards to funds transfer functionality. And currently the system is taking like 40 seconds or 1 minute of time to do a particular transaction with all the details given. That means the beneficiary already added, selecting the beneficiary, entering the details, and clicking on transfer or submit. So the whole transaction is taking so much time. And we want to improve this by 20%, and we want to make sure we do it within like 80 seconds or maybe less than that, or whatever it may be. So that's our target. So that's where like your requirement is clear. You have like a funds transfer functionality, and this is basically with regards to funds transfer functionality, and your requirement is clear and with a measurable criteria, and you have a comparable value, so with which like you can compare present value. Once the implementation or performance is improved, you can go by checking what is the performance levels after the improvement. So that is how the requirement should be unambiguous. Whatever the requirement that we talk about, all the requirement for it, for that fact, we need to make sure the requirements are clearly defined and complete in itself. Each and every requirement or feature or a step in a requirement or subset of requirement should be complete in itself. It should be complete in itself. It should do certain functionality by itself completely. For example, we'll take the example of funds transfer only with regards to a banking system. If you drill down those things, right? If you drill down those things, The first and foremost thing is that you will have to launch the application, www.hsbc.com or dot whatever, and then you need to log into the system. That is the second step. You need to select or add the beneficiary. Once you logged into the system, add the beneficiary if it's not added. If it's already added, you click on funds transfer. Then there will be a set of options and all that within the bank, outside the bank, different types of transactions, again UPI or whatever. You need to choose the type of transaction too, and then you get a application form kind of thing where you enter all the details, or you select from a drop down list and enter all the details, and you need to put the amount and submit. So if you take each of these steps, the user should be able to launch the application by entering whatever the URL. So this particular requirement is complete in itself. It is achieving something. It's a subset of requirement. It is not a feature, right? It is just a one step when you want to do a particular transaction. For anything, you need to be able to launch the application, but that is subset of requirement. We don't develop the system for the sake of launching, right? So that's one subset of requirement, and it is complete in itself. When we define that requirement, it is achieving something. When you're doing www.hsbc.com or city.com, so the screen is opening, this one particular activity is completed. The user should be able to log into the application. So click on login, enter the user ID and password and so on. Any like verification, OTP kind of thing. So you enter the details and log into the system. That becomes your second step. It is also complete in itself. It is achieving something. The user should be able to log into the system. So that's the second step. And third step is where, so the user should be able to add the beneficiary. Select like add, click on add beneficiary, enter the details, submit whatever. You should be able to. So if you take each and every step in the requirement, this requirement should be complete in itself. Complete in itself. All those requirements should be complete in itself. And the requirement should be consistently defined across the documentation. When you talk about consistency, you need to make sure you should follow the format. You should follow the format. So format in the sense, so each and every requirement, whether you follow a simple textual format or a user story format or a use case format, you should follow it consistently across the documentation. For example, 3 VAs are are part of your team. 3 VAs are working as part of your team. So it is not advisable for 3 VAs or how many our number maybe follow different approaches. All of them should follow the same approach. All of them should follow the similar approach. Okay, so that it will be consistent across the documentation, and the dev or any other member should not know who has created which part of the document. That distinguishing they should not be able to differentiate it. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. So consistently defined across the documentation, you have to follow a consistent approach. Then the requirement should be verifiable. Requirement should be testable. You should be able to test the requirement. So you should follow the required steps and testable in the sense that the requirement while defining itself, can it be tested? Can it be tested? So we need to define in such a way that the requirement can be verified in some way or the other. So what will happen if the requirement is defined in such a way that we cannot test it at all? It can lead to potential issues in the production, right? So that's the reason why. So we need to make sure that the requirements are in verifiable format or testable format. So we should have a way where we can test those requirements, or the testing team can test those requirements. And the requirement should be modifiable. We should be able to modify the requirement. So modification in the sense, you should be able to based on the need, we should be able to revert the change. We should be able to modify the requirement, and we should be able to do a number of things. So that's where the requirement should be modifiable. The requirement should be modifiable. So that way, if you talk about a good requirement specification document, the requirement should be clear, complete in itself, consistently defined across the documentation. The requirement should be verifiable. The requirement should be modifiable. Requirement should be modifiable. Is that clear?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Right. So moving on to the actual topic of this chapter, it is about the requirement engineering. So what does requirement engineering talks about? So it's a science and discipline concerned with gathering of the requirements, analyzing the requirements, and documenting of the requirements. So requirement engineering is the science and discipline concerned with gathering of the requirements, analyzing the requirements, and then documenting of the requirements, and then documenting of the requirements. So it talks about gathering the requirements of the system, analyzing the requirements of the system, and documenting of the requirements, and documenting of the requirements. So if you talk about the various stages in the requirement engineering itself, so the requirement elicitation activity, so we should be able to do these things: elicit the requirements or gather the requirement from the stakeholders, elicit or gather the requirement from the stakeholders. Then we talk about the requirement analysis activity, and then we have the requirement validation, and then the requirement specification, and the requirement management or requirement change management. Requirement management or requirement change management. Requirement management and change management. So when we talk about the requirement elicitation, what does it mean by requirement elicitation? What does it mean by analysis? So what are the things that are performed as part of elicitation activity? What are the things that are performed as part of requirement analysis? What are the things that has to be done as part of the validation and specification? Validation is more of a business activity. The business would be doing that validation and stuff. But what would be the things that we create as part of requirement specification and the change management? So when we talk about the requirement elicitation activity, so the requirement elicitation is the practice of gathering the requirements of a system from the users, customers, and other stakeholders, also known as the requirement gathering activity. Also known as the requirement gathering activity. The practice of gathering the requirements of a system from the users, the customers, and other stakeholders, which is also known as the requirement gathering activity. Which is also known as the requirement gathering activity. The process by which the BA has to gather the requirement from the users of the system, the customers, and other stakeholders, which is known as the requirement gathering activity. Which is known as the requirement gathering activity. Now, when we talk about the requirement elicitation tasks, so you have all these tasks performed as part of the elicitation. Prepare for the elicitation, conduct the elicitation, document the elicitation, get the confirmation on the elicitation results. Prepare for the elicitation, conduct the elicitation, document the elicitation, get the confirmation on the elicitation results. Get the confirmation on the elicitation results. Preparation, conduct the elicitation, document the elicitation, get the confirmation on the elicitation result. What is meant by preparation? What is meant by conduct elicitation activity, document the elicitation, and confirm the elicitation results? When we talk about preparation, that is the preparation is the prior activity of gathering the requirement. So what all the things that are done as part of preparation? What all things that we do as part of the preparation? So especially when we are starting a new project, and the most important part is to identify the list of stakeholders who are all my stakeholders? Who is my customer? Who are the end users of the system? And like this will be a question like who are the business representatives for me? And then from technical side, who's a technical lead or an architect? So identify all the list of stakeholders for the system. Identify all the list of stakeholders for the system. So that is one very important thing that happens here. Identify the list of stakeholders. That is the first and foremost thing. Then the next thing is to identify the technique that can be used to gather the requirements. Identify the technique that can be used to gather the requirement. So there may be a number of techniques that you may have. So identify those techniques which can be used to gather the requirements. Identify the techniques that can be used to gather the requirements. There can be brainstorming, personal. We can discuss those things in the next slide. But anyway, so which technique can be used to gather the requirement? Again, it depends upon one of the things is the geographical location of the stakeholders and the cultures. Geographical location and the culture. So based on that, we decide which technique would be more suitable to gather the requirement from the stakeholders. So the first thing is to identify the list of people for the project, the stakeholders. Then identify the technique that can be used to gather the requirement. Identify the technique that can be used to gather the requirement. Then prepare for the technique. For example, if you're using a brainstorming, so it's basically you need a meeting room where you can accommodate all the people, and then you also need an author. So BA would be more of a moderator for the meeting, especially when we follow a brainstorming kind of thing, where you have a number of people talking a number of things. So you by yourself, you cannot author the points of the discussion. So that's why you need someone as an author who should be able to document the points of the discussion. Document the points of the discussion. So you need an author. So for similar way, if you are following personal interviews as the technique to gather your requirement for the system. So in such case, if you're following personal interviews, you need to make sure you have the set of questions which are prepared and which are different for different stakeholders. You cannot have the same question or same set of questions for all the stakeholders. That is not at all advisable. Advisable in the sense, basically, your business person is different, your technology lead is different, your customers are different, and your end users of the system are different, and different people have different understanding of the application. Maybe the same application, but when people look at from different perspectives. So that's why the set of questions that we would be asking should differ from like differ for different people. So that's the reason why when you're following personal interviews as an approach, you need to make sure that so you have to have like the set of questions ready for those stakeholder for the different stakeholders. Then the second is about conduct the elicitation activity. So this where actual action part comes in, where conducting the elicitation techniques might be brainstorming, might be personal interview, might be combination of both. It can not necessary that you should have only one, and you should be having a multiple discussions again. So when we talk about the brainstorming as a technique, so obviously like you have around 1 hour of time, for example. So in such case, the first few minutes are given to like give a brief background of what is the problem statement, why the group is gathered out there, what is the reason. And then next few minutes are to discuss about the solution approaches, and each person should contribute what would be the better possible solution, and they should come up with the ideas or the thoughts and encourage the ideas or the thoughts. Then discuss in detail about those ideas. Like potential ideas, not necessarily all potential ideas. And final few minutes are to summarize on the points of the discussion. Final 5 minutes are to summarize on the points of the discussion, so that it should be like a lead to a next discussion, or it should lead to a proper detailed information. So there should be something that should be like all the points that are summarized after the discussion. So that should happen as part of the conduct elicitation activity. If it is a personal interview, you should schedule a call or schedule a meeting with the people whom you intended to ask. So, and then you have to post the questions. You need to make sure that the questions are not of yes or no type. The answer should not be like a yes or no answers. So you should have the detailed information. Ask them in such a way that you get the detailed information for the requirements. Then, if it is like a survey or questionnaire, there are a number of approaches. Anyway, we'll speak about that. So the conduct elicitation is all about the actionable thing, so the action part of it. Then document the elicitation. You should be able to create the documents, various types of documentation. You should be able to create various types of documentation. Like, sorry, not here. So document the elicitation results. So it basically talks about informal documentation of the things. Informal documentation of the thing. Informal in the sense it could be minutes of meeting. It could be simple rough notes, whatever is prepared after the discussion. So it is not going to be a formal documentation, at least at this point of time. So document the elicitation result, like list out all the requirements and who has communicated that, who is the representation for that requirement. So that documentation of those elicitation results. And finally, confirm on the elicitation result. Do the confirmation on the elicitation result. So confirmation is nothing but we as a BA, we would be sending a confirmation mail to all the stakeholders who participated in the discussion, whom we reached out to, and send the list of understanding or whatever the points that we have documented to get their confirmation. They would look at it and they confirm the set of requirements. So that way, when you talk about the requirement elicitation, so final thing is to get the approval from all the people. So they just look at it, and if there is any modifications needed or is it a straightforward thing, so they will just give that information. Based on that, we can go ahead and do the subsequent activity if they give the approval. So that way, when I talk about the elicitation activity, it is a group activity, and you need to identify the stakeholders, the representatives basically, and then based on the stakeholders, you need to make sure that you arrange for a meeting or a personal interview or any other things that we are going to discuss about, and then conduct the elicitation activity, so where the actual things that should happen, and document the elicitation results, and then confirm on the elicitation result, get the confirmation on the elicitation result. So that way, when we talk about requirement elicitation, all these things should be part of the requirement elicitation activity. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about the elicitation techniques, right? So you have a number of techniques. You may have more than. So you have a number of other techniques, definitely. The ones that are listed out here is brainstorming, document analysis, focus groups, surveyor questionnaire, and personal interviews. Brainstorming, DA document analysis, focus groups, surveyor questionnaire, and the personal interviews. Surveyor questionnaire and the personal interviews. What is meant by brainstorming? Document analysis, focus groups, surveyor questionnaire, and personal interviews. So when we talk about the brainstorming as a technique, as already discussed, so you should have a meeting room booked before, and you should have a model as the author who should be able to document the points of the discussion, and then you should send an invite before a week hour before to make sure that every participant has would be available for the discussion, and then initial few minutes are to give a brief background of the issue, and then next few minutes are to discuss in detail. Discuss about the solution approaches. Next few minutes are to discuss in detail about the solution approaches, and final few minutes are to summarize on the points of the discussion. So that's about the brainstorming thing. And when you talk about document analysis, it's all about looking at the available documentation. So this particular approach would be used, especially if the application has developed 20 years before, at more than that time or duration, and you don't have the people who participated in the development activity in the same organization. You don't have anyone who can give you the background of the things for that application. That's when you can use document analysis as a technique. That is when you can use document analysis as a technique. Then, as part of the document analysis, look at the available documentation. And what are the documents you'd be having? Anyway, you have the requirement document for that application. You have the user guides, and you have the installation guides. So the documents should be read and analyzed by the stakeholders. So when no person who has the understanding of the application is there, so obviously only way is look at the documentation, understand the capabilities of the application. The reason being, there was a study done by Stats Group in the year 2013, and they have realized that the applications that were developed prior to 2012 or whatever, they have studied the application, and they realized that only 19% of the features are majorly used, widely used. So that means many times we use those 19% of the features. Another 39% of the time, 39% of the features are rarely used. For example, for a system, there are 100 requirements or 100 features. Only 19 features are used very frequently on regular basis. It's the same very frequently, maybe, or on the regular basis. And the 39 features are rarely used. 39% of the features are rarely used. So depending upon need basis, or maybe like report generation or kind of thing. And so 39 and 19, so total 58% is gone. So then another 42% of the features, or 42% of things, are never used. So that means that you have the systems with 42% of the features which are never used. Especially one reason we can attribute to is the prior methodologies for waterfall. So when you're using waterfall methodology, so you identify your set of requirement prior, and you go and develop it, whether it is needed for the customer asked for it or whatever. So they thought that all the requirements are kind of necessary, and they have implemented it. So that means that the systems are having a major percentage of the features which are never used. But since these features are never used, no one will be having idea about these features. So obviously, in order to understand that, you need to do the document analysis. Obviously, in the documentation, you'll have all the requirement documented somewhere or the other. So look at the available documentation, analyze the documentation. So basically, the whole idea is we want to implement new features, and we are checking that whether these features can be leveraged from the existing features of the system, which are already there. Can we leverage that? That is the whole thing. So that's where one of the approach is to look at the available documentation, and so on. So looking at the document analysis as a technique. So then we have the focus groups. So focus groups are the set of people. who are experts in different areas. So they are experts in the domain, they are experts in the technology, they are experts in maybe the implementation part. They might have looked at so many projects so far. So that's where the focus groups are the set of people who mostly may be external to the organization, and these focus groups, the set of people, would be given a problem statement, ask them to come up with a solution approach. So obviously, companies will hire the consultants, so who are into consulting business, and they give the problem statement and ask them to come up with a solution approach. The focus groups are such set of people who would be like analyzing the thing and who would be looking at the various possible alternatives, come up with a possible alternative which is feasible for the organization, or which is basically sensible for the organization, or maybe in terms of all the aspects. So they would discuss among themselves and they come up with a number of ideas and discuss among themselves, choose one or two ideas which are suitable for the organization. So that is one particular technique that is used, especially if your organization is small and you don't have the required people who can give us the inputs and all that, or maybe if you are trying to do something outside the your capabilities. In that case, you hire a consultant or set of people, and then depend on them for coming up with a solution approach. Then we have survey or questionnaire as one of the very effective approaches. So wherein you can reach out you'll have a set of questions prepared with regards to the existing features of the system, and you rate like a rating or maybe some kind of feedback mechanism, and you distribute these set of questions to all the stakeholders. So they would go through the set of questions, and everyone basically like a survey questionnaire you can either publish through the email, or maybe a SharePoint, or a common drive where you put in the question. And there are a number of websites where you can create your survey questions and stuff, and you can share the link, and you can reach out to the maximum number of people by using this particular technique. The whole organization also possible. So they would go through it, and then they answer the question and rate the thing. So based on that, we come up with the understanding, we come up with some set of requirements. The only thing is that, so based on what questions that we prepare and based on the answers that the respondents provide, we need to come up with the understanding of the things. If for a particular feature, 60% of the people said this is a much needed feature, and 40% of responded said it is not required. How do we interpret it? How do we interpret those results? So that mapping should be done before itself, not after. But okay, so that mapping should be done, and based on that you distribute the survey questions, and then so you analyze the set of results. This may be very much useful, especially if you're trying to come up with the needs of the organization by understanding what the customers are thinking or the users are thinking about our product. So that's where this particular approach can be very much useful. Then we talk about the most effective approach, that is personal interviews. Personal interviews is the most effective approach in order to understand the requirements. The personal interviews is the most effective approach. In the personal interviews, you will have a set of questions ready for different stakeholders. I'll have questions for the business, I'll have questions for the customer, I'll have the questions for the end users of a system, I'll have questions for my technology leads or technical team members, and I'll have questions for support team if it is already an existing solution. So with those questions, I will set up a meeting with these different stakeholders and then post these questions, and based on their answers, I will basically try to come up with my understanding and the requirements. So obviously this is more specific, and you get more detailed information from the stakeholder group rather than all of them sitting together discussing something. that may not make much sense, but that is required at one point of time, and this part is required like at the later stages. This is a more detailed thing if you want to have it, then personal interviews as the effective approach. At the initial stages, you want to see what people are thinking about and what are the solution approaches that we would be having. So in that case, brainstorming may be effective. To know about feedback, to know about the current existing system, their capabilities, how the people are interpreting those capabilities, you can go for survey or questionnaire approach. So based on the various like levels, you can decide which technique would be suitable for your organization. So in general, for enhancement and all that stuff, it will be a general discussion. May you call it as brainstorming, or may it be something you call it as simple discussion. So there will be discussions among the business and the other stakeholders, and major participant would be discussing, and they come up with a basic understanding of it. After that, it will be like one-on-one discussion, or maybe like personal interviews with one person or two people together, and trying to understand the detailed set of requirements. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Others?
Yes.
Yes. It's clear.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. Moving on to the next activity under requirement engineering, that is basically the requirement analysis. Now we have got the requirements. So these requirements are the stakeholder requirements, which are communicated by the stakeholder, which are communicated business, customers, and users of the system. So on. You have, these are called as requirements which are gathered, stated set of requirements, stated set of requirements. Then it goes to the next stage, which is called as the requirement analysis stage, which is known as the requirement analysis. The process of analyzing the customer and the stakeholder needs to arrive at a definition of the requirement. The process of analyzing the customer and the stakeholder needs to arrive at a definition of the requirement. Arrive at a definition of the requirement. The process by which we analyze the customer needs and stakeholder needs to arrive at the actual definition of the requirement. Actual definition of the requirement. So that's where the requirement analysis is to analyze the stakeholder requirement and come up with the solution requirements. Stakeholder requirement which are stated. So under requirement analysis, there are a number of tasks that are done under the analysis. So one such task is the stakeholder analysis of the requirement, which are in stated format, stated set of requirements. So we need to analyze those requirements. So this stated requirement may not be in a proper format, may not be as per the scope defined. For every project, there is a scope defined. So this is what we wanted to do. This is our target area. These are the boundaries for the system. Scope is nothing but what are the boundaries for this particular implementation? What are things that we want to implement? So that is defined as scope. So when we talk about the stakeholder analysis of the requirement, which are stated, so are these requirements which are gathered in the previous stage are in line with the scope of the project? If yes, then those requirements it will be part of the project. If not, so we just eliminate those requirements as out of scope. So we will be looking at the scope or objective or vision of the project, and then doing scoping and descoping of the requirement which are already gathered. Doing scoping and descoping of the requirement which are already gathered. The stakeholder analysis of the requirements is all about analyzing the set of requirements and deciding upon what are the requirements which are within the scope of the project, what are the requirements which are outside the scope of the project, and then putting it a proper format. That's one another thing, putting it in a proper format. Then give the prioritization of the requirement, priorities like P1, P2, P3, and other priorities. P1, P2, P3, and other priorities. The requirement prioritization is very important. So once we have the analyzed requirement, so obviously you're doing scoping and descoping. Obviously, you'll get the set of requirements which are, we call it a solution requirement. Then we do the prioritization. Give the priorities based on the business value, based on the urgency, based on the dependency. The prioritization is defined. Then organize the requirements based on the components of the system. Organize the requirement based on the components of the system. So we need to be able to organize the requirement based on the component. There are some requirements which may be related to front end. There are some requirements which may be related to like back office and other systems. So that way you organize the requirement based on the components of the system. Organize the requirement based on the components of the system. Then define assumptions and constraints. What are the assumed factors for the development activity? What are the assumed factors for the development activity? So assumption is nothing but a thing that is accepted as true or certain to happen without any proof. That we call it as an assumption. Then constraints are nothing but the limitations for the project development activity. Constraints are nothing but the limitations for the project development activity. Then verify the requirement, the verification of the requirements. So once the requirements are ready with us, we need to make sure whether all the requirements can be tested or not. Can the requirements be verified or not? So that we call it as verification of the requirement. And final thing is about the validating the requirements by the business. So once your requirements ready, you need to make sure those requirements are validated by the business people. So that is known as the requirement validation. So that way, when you talk about the requirements analysis activity, these are all the things that are performed. The stakeholder analysis of the requirement which are stated, doing scoping and descoping of the requirement, and then by doing scoping and descoping, you come up with your final set of requirement and give the priorities, the prioritization of the requirement like P1, P2, P3, P4, especially considering that you follow the agile methodologies. Organize the requirement based on the components. So nothing but there are some requirements which are related to the front office, customer facing, UI screens, UI related requirement. There are some requirements which are related to the report generation. There are some requirements which are related to the database stuff, the database tables. How do we store the data? What are the tables that we are defining for the project? And segregate those requirements based on the components of the system. So that we call it as organizing the requirement and do the segregation of the things. So why we have to do the segregation? The reason being, like when we send these requirements for the approval process, we are not going to get the approvals on the requirement from the same set of people for all the requirements, right? So there will be people who are specific to different components of the system. There is a database admin. There is basically a front office manager or a branch manager or maybe someone who is representing the front office things. So obviously, the set of requirements which are related to the UI, business side of the thing, that needs to be approved by the front office manager. You cannot get the approval on the front office requirements from a database guy who will not be having any idea of those things. So that's why it is very much needed that you need to get the approval from the respective people. Is that clear? So that's where organizing the requirements is very important. Then the assumptions and constraints. Assumptions and constraints are nothing but what are the assumed factors for the development activity. So we go with certain assumptions. We will not be having the complete detailed picture around it. So we assume certain things. For example, we assume that at 10 o'clock morning, we get the data feed from some other system, right? Whatever the proposed system that we are developing, we get a feed from some other system at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's our assumption. So maybe like the other system sends the feed at 10 o'clock 90% of the times or 95% of the time. Sometimes that system may not work or some other reason, like you may not get the feed. So in such cases, so this is our assumption, and for every assumption, if your assumption goes wrong, what is the alternative path you have? That's another thing that needs to be decided. What is the alternative path that you have that needs to be decided? So that basically, like we'll get to know basically based on organizing the requirement based on the components of the system. Organize the requirement based on the components of the system. Then define the assumptions and constraints. Sorry, assumptions already talked about. Constraints. Constraints are nothing but the limitations for the project development activity. Constraints are nothing but the limitations. It could be budget related limitations, timeline related limitations, or skill set related limitations. Constraints are such that these are the limitations for the project development activity. Constraints are the limitations for the project development activity. Then verification of the requirements. Verify the requirements. So make sure that the requirements are in verifiable format, and you're going to like make sure the requirements are in testable format. So go through each and every requirement that we have identified and make sure can this be tested, or can we slightly modify to make sure it is testable requirement. Because if there is no test cases written or if it is unable to be tested, so we are leaving a potential gap for the production issues, which can lead to the monetary loss for the customer, which can lead to the business loss for the business. It can be anything. It can have a number of implications. That's why each and every requirement should be in a testable format, or it can be at least we should be able to write one test case for each and every requirement, as simple as it's mandatory thing. And validation of the requirement. So the validation is done by the business. So once we have the requirements ready, prioritized, and all, so the business has to look at these requirements. What do? They try to align these requirements with their objectives. Obviously, at the start of the project, we have defined the goal objective of the project, and here you have the detailed list of requirements. Now the thing is that the business try to align whether the requirements are in line with the objectives of the project or not. Objectives of the project or not. If they are in line, then that means that you can go ahead with the development activity. If they are not in line, so you can say that okay, if the requirements are not meeting the business objective, there is no point implementing such requirements. There is no point implementing such requirements. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry?
Yeah, I have a question. Like, does the requirement analysis task is a responsibility of a BA only, or is it done by the BA and project manager as a group?
No, it's a group activity, right? So now prioritization, BA cannot by himself do it. But
So
when you talk about the stakeholder analysis of the requirement, it's a group activity. So again, there will be multiple discussions to decide like which are in line or which are out of scope for the project. Okay, so organizing the requirements and define assumptions and constraints, all these things are done by the BA by himself.
okay. So the prioritization of the requirement, like that's the final prioritization, right? If we are using a Kanban methodology, as you said, we can use Moscow or something prioritizing technique. Is that the same one, or?
Yeah, so we can use those techniques. Basically, once you have the requirements ready, so you talk to the business by using the Moscow technique. So what are your front-end requirement that you need from the business side? Okay, so that all must to have requirement. So you should categorize as must to have, and your plan is to put those things as the initial stages of the project for the development activity. So if there are requirements which are should have kind of thing, so we will properly like do it maybe later once we are done with the must to have requirements and so on. So this where once you have the requirements ready, you talk to the business and like follow whatever technique, the prioritization technique is sensible for you, and then decide upon the priorities for the requirements. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Right. So then we talk about the requirement specification. So anyway, I'm skipping this part for now because we have another session where we talk about the various documentation. So that is all about the requirement specification or requirement documentation. So now we talk about one other thing that is basically done as part of the requirement engineering activity, that is called as the requirement management. The requirement management is the planning and controlling of the requirement through the elicitation activity, specification, analysis, and verification activity. The planning and controlling of the requirement through the elicitation, specification, analysis, and verification activities, that is called as requirement management. The process of managing the changes to the requirements. The process of managing changes to the requirement. How do you manage your requirement throughout the documentation? So this is not only specific to the requirement stage, all throughout the development activity, you need to manage your requirements. Manage your requirement for changes or whatever, like any like dependencies or all those. The requirement management is needed. Managing the priorities between the requirement, as we discussed earlier, the priorities are not going to remain the same. Priorities would change. The priorities would change. So managing those priorities between the requirements. Managing the priorities between the requirements. So that is also part of requirement management. As and when the new requirements are identified or defined, so there should be a way, like we should be like do the priorities again. Understand those priorities. According to that, you would be adding to the backlog. Requirement traceability is important. So the most important part is of requirement management is the requirement traceability. We need to be able to trace the requirement both in forward direction and backward direction. Forward direction is nothing but you have a requirement, a breakdown requirement, or maybe a detailed requirement. Subsequently, you may have a use case, and subsequently, you will have the test scenario, you'll have a test case. So if by looking at a test case, you need to be able to link to which requirement are we testing out there. Which requirement are we testing by looking at a test case. So that means that there should be a connectivity. There should be a traceability. And similarly, by looking at a requirement, we should know that what is the business requirement of it. What is the user need for that? So that is called as traceability. We should be able to trace the requirement to its parent requirement, and we should be able to trace the requirement to its next level, like test scenarios and test cases. So that is called as the requirement traceability. That means that for every requirement, you need to have the test scenarios and test cases. Along with that, for every requirement, you need to also have the business requirement and the user needs. That mapping, we call it as traceability, or that is called as the requirement traceability. That is followed by having something called as requirement traceability metrics. Requirement traceability metrics, RTM. So by having this requirement traceability metric, you will have the like different layers of the information put together. Like we have the alignment of those things. Is that clear?
Yes.
Right. So there is we talked about the change management. So the changes does happen as part of the project development activity. And what are the reasons for the requirement changes? It could be the limited list of things. There can be many other things which are not listed out here. Missing requirements. If requirements are missing, like if we missed defining those requirements, that could lead to the requirement changes. Defect or bug in the application. If you have a defect or bug in the application, that could lead to the requirement changes. Misinterpretation of the requirement. If the requirements are not like understood by the development team, and that led to like misunderstanding or misinterpretation, so which could lead to the requirement gaps or which can lead to the requirement changes. Organizational changes, the organization structure or organizational changes. The marketplace changes, the market demands are changing. If the market demands are changing, that could lead to the requirement changes. Legislation or regulatory changes. If the legislatory bodies or regulatory changes could also lead to the requirement changes. Changing customer priorities. If the customer priorities are changing, if the customer priorities are changed, so that could also lead to the requirement changes. So legislation or regulatory changes are nothing but if the Federal Reserve has come up with a new regulation, you don't have a choice. All the banks have to follow it. Similarly, like you have for every industry there is a regulatory body. So when the regulators have come up with the changes, all the participants in that industry has to go by that process. There is no other go. So that leads to requirement changes. Organization structure change that could impact your project, that could impact something which is done manually. So that could lead to the requirement changes. So that way, if you talk about the requirement change management, you have all these things that should be part of requirement change management activity. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Right. So the next one is about configuration management. So the configuration management is the task of tracking and controlling changes in the requirement documentation. So we create the document, fine, and it goes for n number of modifications later. How do we handle it? Because if the requirement gets changed, obviously you'll change the section of that requirement, and again, how do we track it? What was the initial thing and what was the next thing? That is only possible by having the configuration management, by having the versions and all that. The configuration management is the task of tracking and controlling changes in the requirement documentation and the requirement documentation. Configuration management is the task of tracking and controlling changes in the requirement documentation. The process of controlling and monitoring changes to the work product. Process of controlling, monitoring and controlling changes to the work product. The configuration management practices include revision control and establishment of the baselines. So revising the documentation, establishing the baseline documentation. So that way, when you talk about configuration management, it is the task of tracking and controlling changes in the requirement documentation. Task of tracking and controlling changes in the requirement documentation. The process of controlling and monitoring changes to the work product. So controlling and monitoring changes to the work product. So what is meant by revision control? What is meant by baseline? Initially, when we create the documentation, that is called as the draft document. That is not the final document. That's just a draft document. So the draft document, so what will happen? That will basically go for all the levels of approval process. So the draft document would be presented to all the stakeholders, give them a walkthrough of the things, and what do? They after the approval process is done, then it will become a baseline document. Let's say version 1 is baseline now after all approval. You can't make any changes in version 1 anymore. You can't make the changes because it's a baseline upon which the development activity will happen. What if I have to make some changes? Then create another version 2 of the copy of the same, and make your changes, mention what changes you have done to which section of the documentation. And now version 2 is draft document. It is not the final document, it's a draft document. Now the version 2 will go for the approval process. And once all the approvals are received on version 2 will become a baseline documentation. Now version 1 is no more baseline, version 2 is the baseline. So upon which the development activity should happen. Upon which the development activity should happen. So the development should happen on version 2, not on version 1 anymore. So any further changes are not acceptable on version 1 or version 2. You should create another version and make the changes. That way we make sure there is an audit trail of the changes. So like when we discuss about the documented, maybe in the next session, I'll show you how you maintain the audit trail of the changes. So that at some point of time in future, maybe after 5 years or so, or maybe after 1 year, who has made the changes, what was the section that got changed, and who has made the changes, who has approved the changes, that all should be there as part of the documentation, or what was the initial requirement and how it is modified. So that should be part of the documentation. Is that clear?
I have a small question, like what is the exact difference between requirement change management and configuration management? I didn't get that point actually. But I mean, like
Okay.
requirement management is all about like there also you'll be like changing the things and all and managing the things, and here also you're managing the things. But what is the difference?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of difference here. Here we are maintaining the document versions, and
Okay.
that is why it is called as configuration management. So if you have to bring up your requirement document and check after a few years, maybe after some time, maybe after 6 months, and see that, okay, is this the only requirement document, or is there any previous version for the same? So that you'll get to know by looking at the version. Okay, so by looking at the version, say like a 5th version, that means that there are 4 other versions are there, and like there are changes that are done, like from version 1 to version 4, and the 5th version is the baseline. Okay, so what are the changes done? So you should be able to track the changes, where one of the section mentions that, okay, this is the change, this section has got changed, and so on. Okay, so when we talk about change management, one of the requirements in the whatever the list of requirements that we have that is getting changed, that will have impact on the subsequent layers of the information or other requirements. Let's say I've changed a parameter A, which are defined as parameter A, to A plus 2.
Okay.
This is a change I'm doing. So wherever A is being used before, currently I should use A plus 2, which will obviously impact n number of places where A is being used. That is just a simple example. But if you are changing a requirement, so which will obviously impact in n number of other locations, there will be a definite possibility. So we are changing a screen, or we are saying changing a workflow, so it will have the impact on the system. So that's when, so there should be a process that need to be followed for change management activity. Otherwise the changes will go off, and there will be huge impact on the system, and it can lead to monetary losses or business loss or reputation loss. It can be anything. So that's the reason why change management mechanism is very important. There is traceability and everything that needs to be done again when the requirements are changed. Configuration management is just about the document version. Why the document versions need to be maintained? Because the requirements are getting changed. If the changes are done, we need to get the approval process. As part of that, the document versions need to be maintained. If I have to say, as part of change management, configuration management is one thing. Document versioning is one thing. That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So that's about the requirement engineering. So the requirement documentation, that anyway, so we'll discuss in the next session. So any questions so far? Anything?
Sir?
Yes.
Yeah. So the revision control and baseline. The revision control is the draft document which should presented to the stakeholders, and the baseline is the approved document. So that's the difference between them.
No. Revision control is we revise the document versions. Let's say you have version 1 baseline after all approval process. Now you need to make the changes, subsequent changes to the requirement, or you need to add few more requirements. In that case, you revise the document version and you create a version 2. It's a copy of version 1 only, But in version 2, the new changes will be added in, or new requirements will be added in, or modifications or deletions that will happen in version 2. That is called revising the version of the document. Okay, so you created version 2, right, from version 1. That is called as revision control. You revise the document version. The baseline is nothing but initially once you create the document, that is called as a draft document. That is not the final document. The draft will go for all the approval process. Once all the approvals are done, the draft will become a baseline documentation. Is that clear? Makes sense?
Yes. One more thing. The product version document, what is that? Can you please explain?
So which one? The product
version document?
Product version. No, it's not product version. The whatever the requirement document, that particular application or product or solution, one and the same. That means that the system that we are going to develop, that we call with the, like say, different names: solution, product, application. That those versions like that are maintained for the documentation, that is called as the document versions. Okay. So it is either product, we call it as application, or solution. Product is generally, when we say product, it is the physical product that we see, right? So but in software also, software applications also called as software products or software solutions or software applications. Okay. So now operating system version 11 or 12 or whatever it is. So that versioning, and that is basically based upon the subsequent changes we give the versioning or product version. What is your software product version? So that is basically just the version of your application, which version you are using. Are you using the old Microsoft Office or the latest one, 2016 or whatever? So that is, we call it as a product version.
Yeah, like computer is having 11.5. That's a version of the computer we are using. Okay.
Yeah, so depending upon like which operating system, and then based on that.
And document version, where we will document it.
Yeah, so we create the document. So and in that document, any subsequent changes, we create those versions, subversions.
Okay.
All right. With this, I am going to stop here for today. We will talk about a case study in the next session, and we'll talk about I'll basically be giving you some background of that case study, and then you need to go about create the requirements. Create the set of questions and on those as part of the requirement engineering activity. We'll discuss same like tomorrow and day after. We will not be having the sessions, and we will catch up again on Monday.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye bye.